Hello, wonderful listeners and viewers of Amplify. We wanted to take just a second to remind all of you that although our mothers told us to never discuss religion or politics, we at Stories of Anti-Semitism are always talking religion and politics because, frankly, you can't talk anti-Semitism without discussing these things. And so please understand that the opinions of our guests on Amplify do not necessarily represent those of our organization or of our team. And with that disclaimer in mind, we hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Amplify with Stories of Anti-Semitism. I'm Jeremy, and today we're talking about everything at the intersection of Israel anti-Semitism and the church. Why? Because that's what we talk about. And today we're here with our friend Mohamad. Mohamad, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, you've got an amazing story, and we're just going to jump right into it today because you grew up in Iran in an Islamic family. And you've got quite a lot of insight to share with us. And so before we get going into some of those unique insights, why don't you just tell us a little bit of your story? I think what's going to be really interesting for a lot of our audience is to hear about this kind of sort of change of heart that you had, especially as it relates to Israel and Jewish people. But first, just start with your story. How did all this come about?
Well, I was born in 1984 into a war between the two countries of Iran and Iraq. My city was being bombed.
What
And
city?
city of Tehran,
Okay.
and the capital of Iran. And then I remember from my early childhood the sound of sirens and bombs and jets flying and all that. So that's my childhood. And then my dad's brother, my uncle, joined the war voluntarily, and he really accomplished what Islam asked of him, which is to sacrifice your life. And we have streets to our name. My uncle's mural is on the biggest mosque of the neighborhood that my grandparents used to live on. And then we were honored as a family of martyrs. We were elevated in the society. There were when your family becomes the family of martyrs and you get that tag, meaning meaning a parents sacrificing their son for the sake of Islam, there's a lot of benefits from the government, and there's a lot of honor in a culture of honor and shame, which is very valuable. So that's the type of environment I was born and raised.
Wow. So, okay, so you're Islamic, high value on fighting for the Islamic cause. So,
Mm.
so talk a little bit more about that. How do you remember that as a young person, that your family's
That's actually
venerated?
all I remember, because it's
Really?
so important. Um, the When I went to school, let's say when I was 7 years, 8 years, and then on from that, it is everything I remember in our books, in our school. We had when we practiced like some physical trainings early in the morning as boys to go to to our class before we went on to the, for example, science or math class or whatever. uh, the hallways of our school were painted with the flag of America and flag of Israel. They made us walk on them every morning to go on. And then, for example, we would say 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our song was 1, 2, 3, 4, death to America. 1, 2, 3, 4, death to Israel. And that's how we practice as kids growing up.
And this is very young. You're talking kindergarten, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Elementary school.
Okay.
And then they would come and sing some sort, recite some sort of chapters of the Quran early in the morning, and then that was our every single day. Monday, it's actually Saturday through Thursday, because Friday is the day off. That's every morning going to school. That was the story, and then went to class. And then we had so much classes on the culture of jihad and the culture of martyrdom, and to keep that alive, the idol of our time, like the American Idol, the Iranian Idol, was a 13-year-old teenager that when the Iraqi tanks were rolling into his city, he took the grenades and put it on himself and jumped in front of the tank and committed suicide. So he became the idol, and his picture was all over the place. And The Ayatollah of Iran was always talking about him so honorably, and the teenagers should follow his path.
Yeah.
That's my childhood. A little bit of that.
So that's the example for
That was
all of
that-
the children, and even a child should sacrifice their life for the
Yes,
sake.
and that's the greatest honor. And then your picture will be all over the place.
Wow. And support from the government, support
course.
from the community. Okay.
Tremendously.
So this is a high value for you. Let me ask you a question. Is this an Iranian value or is this an Islamic value? Which comes first?
You can't separate them. It's Iranian culture comes out of, most of the culture comes out of Islamic cultures.
Okay.
We didn't know if before Islam coming to Iran, which is 14 centuries ago, you can find this in Zoroastrianism or Judaism or Christianity that lived inside. There is no culture of martyrdom in it,
right?
Culture of jihad in it. And then the Zoroaster, the Persian prophet used to say, think good, do good to others. He didn't say, sacrifice your sons for the sake of a higher God or whatever.
Got it. So for 1400 years, Islam has been the predominant ideology. It's been the predominant mindset.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Inside Iran and in Middle East.
I remember you saying in previous conversation, I think I saw it in the video as well, that you really didn't even have a concept of being able to choose a religious preference. It wasn't like...
Oh, absolutely. You're born a Muslim, you're a Muslim. And it's a privilege. It's looked on that Allah has blessed you and your family and that you're born into this religion in this place.
Okay.
So, and there is no choice. That one of the articles of faith in Islam is destiny or fate. That this is your fate. You're born a Muslim, you die a Muslim, and this is such an honor.
Wow. Okay, so for you just described a minute ago, as a young man walking across an Israeli flag, walking across an American flag, you had a disdain for both. You were taught to think that way. But elaborate a little bit more on that, especially when it comes to Israel. It's what we're talking about here, Israel, anti-Semitism. Describe what you learned in your upbringing about Israel specifically, and or Jewish people.
The sentiment is that whatever is wrong in an Islamic culture, in an Islamic country, in an Islamic society, it is because the Jews are planning a discord among the Muslims.
Okay.
So you just, if the power goes out, for example, in Iran or whatever, if there's a hurricane, it is always Jews causing it.
It's always the Jews.
So, and then you're growing up, and then unknowingly, this brainwashing, if you would want to call it, if you wanted to call it programming, whatever it is, it's like this hatred for the Jews, hatred for the outsiders, hatred for America. It is it's mother's milk to you. It starts as early as that.
So,
and you just for some reason, and then there's so much anti-Semitic, anti-Western, anti-Christian propaganda on TV that it becomes your reality, it becomes your truth, that anything that is wrong, whoever is got a problem, if there's even problems in the government, it is a spy of Israel or something. It was Mossad or something is doing this.
So, okay, I don't know if you can give an example, like, because you mentioned TV commercials, essentially. What do these commercials say? What do they look like? Like, give an example that you remember.
For example, the Palestinians are being oppressed. I grew up always remembering, before prayer, before whatever, there's the Iranian TV, Iranian programs would show that Israeli soldiers are beating up and tearing apart Palestinians.
Okay.
And look how evil and oppressive these people are, and these poor Palestinians. And we have to defend them, and this is our job as Muslim, to defend other Muslims and all that.
Okay.
That was growing up just watching those things. Horrible pictures that for example, kids are being carried over to ambulance, and look, Israel is bombing them and occupying and all that. So that's what I grew up with. One of the things I grew up with in regard to Israel.
And I'm connecting the dots here because you're saying you were born in 1984, and so you're watching these commercials, and these commercials are happening late 80s, early 90s. So this is a long time before October 7th and what we're seeing right now. This is 30 years ago. 30 years ago in Iran, you're being taught to hate Israel and Jews.
It has nothing to do with October 7th. There's thousands of October 7th prior to that.
Right.
That Islam always, 14 centuries of history shows that the Prophet of Islam did not, that's a very light way of putting it. Prophet of Islam had such a hatred for the Jews, for the Christians, that this was part of the religion. To be a good Muslim is to hate the Jews.
Yeah.
That's part of the religion.
So we didn't plan to talk about this in this interview, but maybe you could just take a minute and give a couple of examples of either things that are in the Islamic writings or even things from history that we know have been done by Muslims against Israelis or Jews. Just take a minute, take us down that funny trail.
In the Islamic doctrine, it says that when the day of judgment comes, the Jews will hide themselves behind the rocks. Okay. And then asking Allah to kill them, asking those rocks that do not show us because there's such a great judgment. And then Quran chapter 98 verse 6 call Jews and Christians the worst of the creatures. Whenever in Quran you look at the word pig, unclean, meaning something unclean, is referring to the Jews and Christians, especially Jews. You can look it up. It's all woven into the Islamic doctrine in their most holy book and the scriptures. There's no scriptures. I take that back. In their holy book and all of their traditions.
And in this is writings like the Hadith, which are not correct.
Saying, but the sayings of Muhammad or his company, which is as valid as Quran is.
Right.
So it is all in there. It's not like something hidden that we're discovering today.
Okay.
And the history shows that Muhammad himself had so much disdain, so much problems with the Jews because they never submitted to him, or they never accounted him as a prophet. The Jews never credited him because in the beginning, when he was supposedly a coexist prophet, when he was when he had 120 followers, he came to the Jews to get to appeal to them to get confirmation for his prophethood. And the Jews laughed at him. They said, they all come from our genealogy. They come from our tree. Who are you?
Okay.
And they called him a demon-possessed person, actually.
I've never heard this story before. If someone wanted to read about it, where would they go to hear about it?
Chat GPT.
Okay, well, sure.
Chat GPT.
Where we all go, right? Okay.
Yeah. Just ask everything I'm saying, fact check it with Prophet Google.
Prophet Google.
Yeah, it is out there.
I like that. Okay, that's great. So thanks for shedding some light there. I think probably the thing everybody's dying to hear is what happened, because now you don't hate Israel. You were taught to hate Israel. You were taught to hate Jews. Now you don't. So what?
Let me, before we go there, I add a little bit of more insight into this. So I finished my high school, and being in that environment of I have to walk where my uncle walked, and this kind of brings so much honor to my family. And eventually the martyrs of war, the martyrs of Jihad, they can intercede for 70 members of their family. So not martyrdom would only get you saved, it will get your 70 members of your family. And you might be asking why a mother would sacrifice her son. Because there is no salvation. There is no sorts of thinking of, I'm going to get out of here other than sacrificing my son. That's why the mothers encourage their sons to go to this type of wars and situations, because they know this is the only chance of redemption or salvation or even earning that place with Allah.
If you could, we still want to hear your story, but you bring up this word salvation, or the concept of salvation. I know how we think of that, in the world of Christianity. I'm guessing it's different in Islam. So when you say, when you talk about Islam, Muslims, excuse me, who are seeking salvation or redemption, what is it that they're seeking? What is it that they're trying to gain?
So there is no promise of salvation. So it's a religion. You have to do good, but everything whatever I mention, I have to translate it, because from your Western mentality or Judeo-Christian values, you think good is what we call it good as Christians or Jews.
Being moral, doing good things, doing the right thing.
Good is what Sharia tells Muslims to do.
Okay.
Good is what Islam tells Muslims to do. Good means to submit, do not ask questions. Good means have hatred toward other people that are not Muslims. That is a good thing, according to Muslims. That's in their Sharia, in their way of life. So there is a supposed scale that Allah holds. There's good deed and bad deed. And then no matter how much you do of this, you put on this scale, you will never know how much you have done, how much is enough. The only promise of being approved or accepted by Allah, it is going to be martyrdom. That's the only promise in all of Islam we can find. Otherwise, you just have to hope. And that's why they say inshallah, means hope to Allah. Because I don't know what is going to happen to me. There are so much negativity that they hear. There's so much uncertainty that they hear, that they always say, I'm doing my best, or I'm keeping the 5 pillars or 6 pillars of Islam. I'm going to the pilgrimage. I'm doing this. I'm paying. I'm fasting. But I don't know what would happen to me.
But at the top, the thing every Muslim,
if they go deep into Islam, if you're a religious person, you really want to pursue Islam to the core, to the end of it, the only thing you will find is martyrdom.
Okay.
That will guarantee your place with Allah.
That's the guarantee.
And then Muhammad said, martyrdom is so good that you want to die and come back and die again.
Wow.
And repeat that. That's how good it is.
So we have Muslims who hate Israel and then are very willing to die for the cause of Islam, especially dying as a martyr, maybe even to take out Jewish people or to take out Israelis.
Taking out outsider while you're dying, that's jihad.
Okay.
It's whoever causing the discord in the land of Muslims. The biggest enemy is the Jews. The biggest enemy. In the Shia version, the apocalypse will not happen if the Jews are still here.
Okay.
So you have to cause chaos in order for the savior of Islam, Mahdi, the 12th Imam, to come back.
Okay.
And supposedly bring justice, the Islamic version of it.
We're wading into deep Islamic waters here. We probably need to do another one of these. But let's switch gears here.
Let me tell you, I didn't get to my point.
Oh.
I finished high school. I was 18 years old. And then I was, you have to serve like Israelis, like Koreans, many countries. It's mandatory
service, right?
Mm-hmm. It's conscriptions. It's not your choice, like America, that I'm going to go sign up. But my service was in the Revolutionary Guard of Iran, the Islamic Revolutionary IRGC, which is a terrorist organization now. Thank God for President Trump to assign that, to recognize that organization as a terrorist organization. But that's where I was trained.
Okay.
And then while I was there, it was you're a soldier. You learn to be a soldier, but it's a whole lot more than that. They take it to the spiritual things, which is martyrdom is a spiritual factor in an Islamic mindset. So you want to keep that culture, you want to keep that mindset alive in you as a soldier. So they tell you that the greatest cause of Islam is to die for the sake of Islam, to defend Islam, to fight for Islam. And then that's what I was taught as a soldier while I was in the Revolutionary Guard of Iran. Part of the training is that they put you in the empty tombs, empty graves during night to fight the fear of death. That's
Wow.
part of your training.
Wow.
Yeah. Shooting guns and this and that, yes.
Right.
But because in order to get you to that point, there has to be so much extra psychological training.
Right.
And that was part of ours.
There's breaking down
Mhm.
your fear of death.
And then take you to show you the people before you how much they sacrificed. people like my uncle, my cousins, how much they sacrifice, the places that they have died, shed their blood, and so on and so forth. So that's part of your training.
Wow. Okay. So you're raised hating Israel, but also very willing to die for the Islamic cause. And I don't know at what point that changed for you, but that's what we want to know. Like what changed? How did this all come about?
Yeah, if the change of heart would have not happened, we would have not having this conversation.
I believe that.
Yeah, we wouldn't be
Hearing your story, I believe.
sitting here and having a conversation. But a few months after my military service, I was praying to Allah that give me.
How old were you at this
I'm
point?
21 years old. I'm almost 22.
Okay.
And I'm praying to Allah to give me the opportunity. Martyrdom is this ladder that gets you straight to paradise. It's a shortcut of the Islamic path, because the path is, when it's described in Islam, it's a very narrow path that you have to cross from one side to the other side, from this side to the eternity. And as Muslims, they describe that to you, that when you're walking over this bridge, you will fall into the lake of fire. But the martyrdom gets you straight there. So you don't cross this path or this bridge, narrow bridge. So I'm 21 year and some months that I've finished my military service. I'm out, I'm praying to Allah, I'm in mosque, really active, and hopefully getting the opportunity to go fight for Islam and earn the ultimate reward, if you would call it. And then I have this friend of mine that we grow up together, but we're 3 days apart. He's 3 days older than me.
Okay.
So,
Birthdays.
and his name is Rasul. And then this friend of mine, when I was conscripted to go to the military, he has flat feet, so he was medically exempt. So we had 2 years apart from one another. And then I come back and we want to get caught up with him. And then we go out, he wants to see me, we go out, and then I realize my friend is really changed. He's the same person, but he's so calm, so peaceful. He was really changed to the point it bothered me. Like, I know you, but I don't. I see you, but there's something really weird is going on. And then I asked him what's going on, and then he said he became Christian. I said, became Christian? It's not changing your shirt. If you believe in fate, you can't change your caste that you were in there. You can't change this. When he said that, it threw me off. So I went on a journey in that conversation to figure out what's going on with him, because I felt, God knows, I felt that he's on some sort of a drug. It's like enticed, magic or something. And he said, I became Christian. This conversation got very heated really quick.
I was going to ask, you were angry.
I was very angry. I was very
betrayed.
upset. Yeah. But above all of that, I just wanted to understand, because if you're born a Muslim, we believe that you cannot change your religion. You can't even, the concept doesn't even exist, then I can change it. You're going to die as a Muslim. But he says he has changed it. He has become something else. So I start asking him the question of, in my mind, if he has done it, he's stronger than God. So if you supersede or change the will of God for your life, you're stronger than God. Then the will of God is not working in your life. It just didn't make it. So I start asking questions from him. Went about this for a long, probably over 2 hours of conversation, going back and forth, trying to figure out
what's still about one first conversation. Okay.
So in the midst of all of this conversation, he never lost his peace. And I know my friend was a nasty person.
Okay.
I poked at him. I provoked him any way I could.
You were trying to get him angry.
Yeah, but like before, that this is something you're making it up. It cannot be true. And then after all of this conversation, he came to a point that he said, Mohamad, didn't you ask me the reason for this change? I'm telling you. And it's Christianity, is Christ, it's Jesus. And then he said this that changed my life. He said Jesus was beaten, he was bruised, he was cut, his blood was shed, and he gave up his life. And if you believe in that, you will have eternal life. You will have salvation. You have redemption. When Jeremy, when he said that, it just like my heart was cut in pieces. I just fell on my knees.
Wow.
I fell on my knees and I begged him.
You fell on your knees right there in the
right there, begged him.
Okay.
After this conversation, when I heard this, what Jesus has done for me, let me, before continuing, let me tell you why. As Shia Muslims, we do self-flagellate a whole lot. We bring judgment to our body. We take a sword to our head and cut ourselves in order to shed our blood to cleanse ourselves. That's part of the paying penance.
Okay.
And then he said, but I have done this now. I'm 21 year old, 22 years old almost. And he's telling me that everything I was trying to do as a Muslim to please God, to be accepted by God, to be approved of him, it is already done.
Wow.
And that payment, the payment I was trying to do by shedding my blood, by sacrificing my life and all of, which hasn't been working. It seemed that the more religious I became, the more depressed I became, the more empty I became, the more suicidal I became. And then he says, it's already done. It is finished. And if you accept it, you will have eternal life. I just had this veil of deception of Islam tore off of my mind that moment.
So in that moment, did you change religions? Did you convert right
I didn't
there?
know what it is. These are convert, really, changing. These are things that you can call it whatever you want. I just wanted what he had.
Wow.
And that's what I wanted, because I was working so hard to please God. And he said to me, God has been pleased because of what Jesus has done.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wanted. I didn't want God to be mad at me and be upset and nitpicking everything that I was doing and everything else. So,
wow. So in that moment, you have this radical shift. I mean, what strikes me is you describe being brought up with this idea that if you do all of these things and really you become a martyr, right? You give up your own life, then you'll get eternal life, or you'll get the paradise.
Sacrifice your life.
Versus
A life has been sacrificed for me.
Right. Totally opposite.
Totally opposite.
Really. Totally opposite. And so that changes you. Your heart changes, your mind changes.
When I accepted it.
Right.
When I accepted the message, when I humbled myself and I said, I'll give anything, I'll do anything to have this, what you're saying. It is more than an intellectual argument, if you would call it. And I had an awakening of a spiritually being awakened. My spirit man was made alive to God, and accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And instantly, the brawl that I was always in, constantly trying to please God, to please my family, please the society, please what Islam asks, that was all, it just was yanked. It was just already came to a peace. I just knew instantly in my heart that the war is over.
Wow.
The war has been fought and won, and I just didn't know the news.
Wow. Amazing. So this is pretty instantaneous then. It's a major shift.
Very, very instantaneously.
So
major shift happened.
That story all by itself is amazing. I think to bring things back toward Israel and anti-Semitism, what began to change for you as it pertained to
Everything.
Israel and Jewish people?
Everything. So I went from somebody that is striving constantly to please God, to know that God is pleased with him. So, and then instead of Quran that I had to recite every day, memorize everything, go to mosque and shout death to America, death to Israel. That's the prayer. As I mentioned, this is, I wish I could take everything out of my heart and put it in your mind that, I'm not anti-Muslims, or but prayer in Islam is not prayer. You just form an army in the mosque to show to the world that we're united against you. That's the formation that they have. It has nothing to do with prayer. If it was prayer, you wouldn't go and yell death to America or death to Israel,
Right.
or death to whoever that is the enemy of that moment. In your prayer, we don't go pray, God curse this people, curse that people, death to this people. We don't. That's not prayer. Prayer is a communion, is a fellowship with you and your God.
So was there something in your Bible that caused you to begin to change? I don't know if it was sudden or if it was progressive, but what changed that attitude towards Israel?
Exactly. And then I realized, after reading the New Testament and going to the Old Testament, I was reading Isaiah,
Okay.
that when he talks about he is the Prince of Peace, he is the King of Jews. I'm like, my God, the King of Jews, say that the very people that we hated, the very people, their God is the God of salvation.
So you connected with the Jewishness of Jesus and realizing that he's Jewish, and of course his followers Jewish, in the Jewish context of the New Testament.
Apostle Paul was Jew, Peter was Jew,
Right.
John, everybody.
And you're going, my gosh, a Jewish guy saved my life.
And even though I didn't want to admit in the beginning, I realized that's why we hated the Jews.
Wow. Wait, say it again. You hated the Jews because
they have the truth. They had the Bible.
Okay.
They had the salvation was from the Jews. Who would have come?
Wow.
From Abraham, from David. And I was just, even though I didn't want to admit it, the more I read, the more I studied the Bible, the more I connected it,
Mm-hmm.
the roots was the same.
Yeah.
And that's why Islam hated it, because the salvation belonged to them.
Yeah.
The Bible, the truth belonged to them. And because they didn't have it, they were contradicting it. They were hating it.
This is phenomenal. I think maybe what I wasn't ready for was how spiritual, how deep of a change this was for you, and how spiritual that change was. And of course, then because you're being spiritually changed, you're seeing Israel in a new light, Jesus in a new light, Jewish people in a new light. I think one thing that probably we should just cover for our Jewish audience is, for you to change from Islam to Christianity. Some Jewish friends of ours would say, "Wow, we really don't feel great about telling people to change religions or to convert." Rightly so, because Jewish people were forced to convert by Christians a lot over the last 2,000 years, and so that's a real sticking point for most of our Jewish friends. In your opinion, when Muslims change religion, because you're not the only one, you're not the only Muslim that has ever changed religions. Are you losing something of your identity or your culture? Was it as though Christianity stole something from you? Because your story sounds very different than that. Talk about that.
Yeah. Christianity stole something from me, and that's the hatred.
Okay.
And that's going to hell. And running actually toward hell, and those bitter resentment that I had toward every outsider other than Muslims, that was stolen from me. So I'm glad that it was stolen from me. I'm really, really glad. And I have nothing toward other people, nothing toward people say, when you start talking about these things, now they think, no, you're not anti-Semite now, but are anti-Muslim. How could I be anti-Muslim? All of my family, all of them, are a bunch of Muslims. How could I be hating my mom, for example, or hating my dad or brothers or my nephews and nieces? How's that even? I mean, if you clear that fog out of the air, I would say what I have lost has been hatred, and what been replaced it is love and acceptance and care for other people more than anything else. Have lost the lies and the deceptions of Islam and it was exchanged for truth. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
Okay, just to follow up to that, when it comes to loving Israel, do you think that there's any way that another Iranian like yourself could remain Islamic, but stop hating Israel and Jewish people?
Iranians are, if you're talking about Islam, the answer is no. Persians, Iranians, yes.
Okay.
There is so much history between Persians and the Jews in the Bible that has been wiped out of the Iranian or the Persian culture because of Islam. But if this Islam, which is going to fall on its face, and the head of the snake will be crushed inside Iran, I believe that with all of my heart. Jeremiah chapter 49, the last 4 verses, 35 to 39, they all talk about Elam. Elam was the grandson of Noah that pitched his tent in Iran. There is a province inside Iran, the current Iran, that is called Elam today.
Okay.
And the latter part of that prophecy said that God will set his throne in Elam. So there is so much history, there's so much biblical context and connections between Persians and Jews that if you start pumping Christianity, pumping Bible, pumping anything historical inside Iran, the Persians will lose their hatred. They already hate Islam. Islam will collapse inside Iran. The heart of the Iranians is changing. There was a survey that you could go actually look it up by nonprofit out of Netherlands called Gaman, Gaaman. They studied the Iranians. They studied 50,000 Iranians inside Iran in 2020. Less than 1/3 they claim to be Shia or Muslims. Less than 1/3.
Wow.
That is and since then it's even more. Why this is important? Because as Iranians get away from Islam, they get closer to Judaism, they get closer to Israel, they get closer to Christianity.
How many, and I'm talking about the religious government of Iran, what does Iran say the number of Muslims are in Iran?
According to the government, everybody.
99.99.
Okay.
Wow.
They're crazy.
Okay. But only 1/3 is what it's.
This is 50,000 Iranians inside Iran, which is, I think, still a generous numbers. Jeremy, I travel to the neighboring countries of Iran. Me and my team, we talk to thousands of Iranians. As soon as we offer them a Bible or a New Testament or talking about an alternative to their religion, they say, "Oh, we don't want it. We don't want a religion. We hate God. We hate religion. We hate this," because everything that it has been done to them this past 45 years, it's in the name of Islam, and it has made them disillusioned with it.
Right.
The Iranians are shouting on the streets, "We don't want to be in Lebanon. We don't want to be in Syria. We want to be in Iran."
Right.
We don't want to hate this. We don't want to hate that. We want to love Iran. That's a transformation that is happening because of this Islamic regime inside Iran.
Wow.
So it's hopeful.
So you see a lot of hope for Iranians to turn, Persians to turn toward Israel, to not hate Israel anymore, both because of just the change of heart, but then also because you would expect that at least some it would have experiences like yourself, and many do. Faith journey would cause them to realize,
we have a saying in our nonprofit, in our ministry. We say we're turning the worst enemies of Israel to its best friend, and I'm one of them.
Wow.
That's when they accept Jesus, that's what happens to them.
Yeah.
They become supporters of Israel like you have never seen one.
Yeah.
And it's not something that they're making it up. They love, they dream about one straight flight one day from Tehran to Jerusalem, that they could see the land.
They want to see the land because they know that's where Jesus walked, right?
Jesus walked, and all of the connections, the history and the biblical prophecies that exist. They just want to see it. They just want to walk where all the Jews they walked.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to turn us just a little bit. We talked about religion and Christianity and Islam and Judaism and all, just, I guess, the soup that we get from that. But, earlier you and I were talking, and I mentioned the Abrahamic religions. Obviously, today I think it's sort of an appeal for unity between Islam and Christianity and Judaism. And you said that's a farce. That's not a thing. That's not something that Muslims would ever say. So talk to us a little bit about that.
I was introduced to Abrahamic faith, the common ground, the interfaith dialogues and stuff like that when I moved here to the U.S. And as my English was growing, my vocabulary was growing, I was hearing these terminologies, and I wanted to know what are they. And then I realized that when there's an interfaith dialogue, or when there's the common ground of Abrahamic faiths, it's always Muslims coming to the churches, Muslims coming to the synagogues. It is never.
It's one-sided.
It's never a rabbi or a pastor going to a mosque.
Wow. Okay.
Then I realized, oh my goodness, the Muslims are practicing Islam on a different level, even here in the West. And
when you say a different level, you mean at a higher level in the West?
In a very sneaky political twist of an Islam now, it's been practiced. And Abrahamic faith is one of those things. And this is the question I ask. If Islam is Abrahamic, why the children of Abraham are not allowed in the Islamic countries? Why Christians and Jews are persecuted in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Saudi Arabia? Do I need to go down the list?
No.
But why wouldn't Muslims would be persecuted in Israel, in America, or 5,000 other countries that is out there? That is, they look at them just as people and not just a religious group that has come to infiltrate.
Right.
So there was something wrong with it when I was start thinking about it. The more I studied, the more I realized the attempt, the goal, the purpose might seems good, but is only enabling Muslims to gain political, to gain spiritual, to gain foot into the doors that they would never had before. And that's a very dangerous path to go down.
It is. And you mentioned earlier, I think the phrase you used was bipolar. It's almost like there's two people here when we're talking about Muslims, especially maybe Muslims in America or other places in the West. So what did you mean by that? We have Muslims who are, they're tricking us?
It is part of the religion. There's early stage of Islam and there's later stages of Islam. When they practice the earliest stages of Islam, meaning when they do not have the numbers. For example, in Iran or in Syria or 56, 57 Islamic nations, for example, if you go to Pakistan, they do not practice the earliest stages of Islam, which is the peace and loving and the coexist.
Okay.
Because they have the numbers, the government has been already overturned and it's an Islamic caliphate or Islamic nation. They practice the later. Okay. So if you blaspheme Allah in Pakistan, the law is to kill you. In Iran, if you're an apostate, if you leave Islam, you're killed.
So you're talking about Sharia law being enforced in Iran.
Which is the latter practices of Islam, latter days or latter when they gain numbers. But when they do not have the numbers, they do not practice Sharia. Okay. They become that peace-loving, cute, cuddling Muslims that they are.
Okay.
And that's when that you realize there's not one person live in that body. There are two people. There's the trustworthy one and the untrustworthy one. The trustworthy one, or the one that is talk about coexist, talk about Abrahamic faith, talk about interfaith dialogue, talk about we love Jews, we love Christians, we love Jesus, we love this Israel and all that. That Muslim is practicing the early days of Islam. If the very Muslim is in a mosque or is in an Islamic country, you see the other side of Islam. So why didn't they practice peace on October 7th?
Right.
If they exist, is this a part of this Abrahamic faith? Why don't you practice it? No, they've been radicalized. No, there are two people living, they're in different times according to the religion. If we have the numbers, we attack. If we have the numbers, we overtake. If we have the political power or the armies, we'll overtake. We'll take over the place. We'll change it. We'll Islamicize it wherever we go. When we don't have it, then slowly we infiltrate neighborhood after neighborhoods. Just go to St. Cloud, Minnesota.
Right.
$5 million First Assemblies of God of St. Cloud is the biggest mosque now in St. Cloud. Out of every 4 people that you see in St. Cloud, 1 is Somali Muslim. They do not practice the early days of Islam anymore, or the stages of Islam. I can go much deeper in that to explain all that, but they call it the 2 houses of Islam. You can fact check me on Prophet Google.
Okay.
The 2 stages or the 2 houses of Islam. There is house of war and house of peace. They have peace when they have overtake that community, that city, that nation and all that. Until they have not taken over Israel, there's always going to be war, because that's what's called the house of war.
Mm-hmm. So, well, for a second, just explain then, the difference between what we're seeing with Israel and what we're seeing in let's use Britain or France as an example. Now many are very concerned because there's a majority, or there's a high number of Muslims in those nations. Mosques have taken over churches. They become very old.
But did they come in to take over? They came as this poor refugees, or they
Right.
came in as this poor immigrants. They just wanted better lives. What happened to it? Now they kick out Jews and Christians out of those neighborhoods. And I have been in places in Germany that they enforce the Sharia that they enforce in Saudi Arabia or Iran. They had the Sharia police strolling through town. And if you drink on Friday or something, they tear you apart, God knows, in Germany. Because the earliest stages of Islam practicing is over. They have the numbers, they have the police, they have infiltrated the police by going and getting hired there, and then in the courts and in the places. So they have filled and occupied those spaces. Now the mosque claims that this is the latter. This is the house of Islam.
Wow.
This is not the house of...
Now with Israel, that's not the strategy. The strategy is, just to use your phrase, it's the latter Islam.
Yeah,
period.
They're telling us every day that from river to the sea.
Right.
Right?
Right. Absolutely.
So they're talking about wiping this nation out, because then who's going to occupy all the surrounding Islamic countries?
Right. I want to go back to something you said a second ago. You talked about, two different people. This person that really, I guess, for all intents and purposes, can't be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
As Christians, as Westerners, as Americans, as Jews, are you saying that we should never trust anything that a Muslim says, even our Muslim neighbor or the Muslim down the street that goes to mosque?
As friends, as neighbors, maybe, but in politics, in religion, they would always put themselves first.
Okay.
And you will be the victim. How do we know that? 14 centuries of Islam has proven it to us. We don't need to practice it another 100 years to know. It's already proven to us. Wherever Islam goes, they would eliminate other religions, other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Can you practice whatever in Bangladesh, or can you practice whatever outside of Islam in Bahrain, in Sudan? Are there any synagogues in Tehran? That's Islam.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're doing a service to Allah by wiping out all of this uncleanness. They call the outsiders unclean, and they have to clean them out.
Right.
And that's commanded by Allah. And they're doing good, according to Islam. They're doing good. They're doing a service now to Germany to wipe out the German culture, this filthy German Christian culture. We need to turn every church to a mosque.
Right. And we've seen that.
It's happening in England, France, Germany, name the countries throughout Europe.
Okay, I'm going to change directions just a little bit again, because I said a minute ago we were going to talk a little bit more about politics, and so I want to turn us toward politics. I think you made a great distinction when we were chatting earlier between liberalism and leftism. So I want you to talk about that for a second, but then I want you to just connect the dots. Why is Islam finding a home on the left?
Okay.
How did these two strange bed partners have to?
Supposedly, before we compare liberalism and leftism, which I think Dennis Prager does the best job. You can watch that on PragerU, and he does the best job. But usually liberals are the people that are for, in our context, in the American context, are pro-gun, pro-property, pro-individual rights and women's rights and stuff like that. But the left is absolutely against everything I said. They just want to, whatever system exists, they want to remove that system, overturn the system, and turn it to the utopia that they believe that it's going to brought by the Marxist mentalities or the Marxist system.
It's totalitarian and very much. If you don't agree with us, you're an enemy of ours.
And the left is very anti-God.
Right.
Everything religious. The religious is leftism. The religion is atheism, hating God. And the government will become God in leftism. Liberals are not like that. And why all of a sudden this stark difference between leftism, which is, we're talking about a theocracy with Muslims, and then you're talking about leftist, a Marxist state of utopias that everybody is equal and whatever. And then how did they find common ground to work together?
Exactly.
They both have a revolutionary mentality. They both are always the victim. My friend used to translate for, he's a Kurdish Muslim background believer or a Christian that used to translate for the German government. 7 Afghan refugees, in quotation. Everybody that walks to your home these days or to your country, they call them refugee for some reason. These 7 Afghans on a broad daylight on a bus, they picked up this 13, 14 years old German girl on the bus. They were trying to rape her. And then my friend was trying to understand, what are you guys doing? What is going on with you guys? And then he was asking them in Farsi, in their language, what's the deal? They said, Allah made us. That's the removal of choice. And then the German girl was smiling at them. This is giving them green light.
Wow. So
hear me now. This, and then talking to these type of cultures, you bring them in. They always think very hostile toward the culture that they exist in. The left is very much like that. They're very hostile to the culture that they're in. Everything American, they hate. Everything American government, they hate. Everything the founding father, they hate. That's Muslims. And then these Afghans, they were claiming that they're the victim because these girls were putting them in that situation by smiling at them and giving them the green light or whatever on a broad daylight. The mentality is very similar, even though one set of them, they believe in God, the other one don't. But in these things, they find a lot of common ground to work things out.
It's kind of like the enemy of the enemy is my friend.
But they're not enemies.
Well, right. But they're the enemy of, they have a common enemy. I'll say it that way.
Very much, they do.
And so they have a common
agenda. The Western world, the Judeo-Christian values is their common ground, the common enemy.
Right.
The left and Muslims, they found this unholy alliance, and that's how they took the king of Iran, which was very pro-West, pro-America, pro-Israel. The king of Iran had great relationship with Israel. What happened to it? The left, the French left, the British left, and then at the time, Jimmy Carter, the American left. They all lined up. They were cooking the Ayatollah in France when he was in exile. They cooked him up, and then the king was talking about nationalizing petroleum and the energy, and that's what they didn't like in America. And then the revolutionary mindset of getting rid of the system that exists, the government that exists, and replacing it with our revolutionary. And who was the Ayatollah, the replacement? They caused chaos and havoc inside Iran, inside the universities. It comes always out of universities, just as you see here, that we will get rid of the rich, which was the king at the time. We'll get the rich, we'll distribute the money among Iranians, and we'll have utopias. Iranians, they really believed it. And they went on the street, they were manipulated emotionally. And the Ayatollah of Iran, his most famous speech, Jeremy, is about free transportation will bring the petroleum money to your table, free water, free electricity. That's his famous speech.
Wow.
And that's the language. Who taught him those things? Who taught this Islamists this stuff? The left,
Yeah.
friends.
Well, right. We're hearing this right now, right?
Very much.
I want you to talk about college campuses here in just a second. But I mean, obviously we know the story from history. We know the story because that's how communism has worked its way into other nations.
Now,
Russia.
the brown shirts of Hitler, the stormtroopers of Hitler, the left has chosen the stormtroopers to be Islamists. So if they want to cause chaos, let's say any sorts of making a city, a place unstable, they have the Muslims in their back pocket to commit jihad. They take a knife, they get a car, and they go to a Christmas market or something like that, and then destroy it. And that's caused the havoc. And then, oh my goodness, I can talk so much about that. And that's where it all comes from. And then where it starts, all of this movement in universities.
Real quick, before we go on to universities, I remember the first time we met over a year ago. You made a statement that I thought was a huge statement, very intense statement, but you said, look, the same leftists that will bring Islam into power in America will be the first people that they line up and execute. And I thought, wow, that's a really, really intense statement. But you said, well, look, it's what they've done.
Left will bring Islamists into power. Left will bring Muslims to vote for him. But when Muslims take over, the left, the homosexuals, the atheists, I can go down that line of what left. The women right advocates. Those are the very first people they will execute.
Wow.
Because it's the left call the Muslims useful idiot. The Muslims call the left useful idiot.
Right. They both think they're using the other one, but I think what you're saying is we know who wins out in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, let's go back now. I took you on a bunny trail. Let's go back for a second. Talk about campus protests against Israel, the anti-Semitism within them. I'm just thinking back to a year ago when it was the American government who said, we found out where the money's coming from for these protests.
It's not only the money, brother. It's not only the money.
No, it's not. Talk more about that.
So the left has already destroyed most of the American campuses. When you go to when 18 years old in America goes to the university, they go in one way. When they come out,
right,
they come out another way, which is they all similarly almost even think the same way, no matter what they have studied. And they go out loving God. They go into the university loving God. They come out hating God. And everything Americans has been, I don't know, it's always about the oppressed and the oppressor.
Neo-Marxism.
The founding fathers were a bunch of white guys with slaves or whatever. There's nothing good about it. So it's been cooking for several years, decades in America already. And then the Iranian regime find that this is a breeding incubator.
Okay, there we go, incubator.
To cook it when October 7th or any sorts of things such as that happens, to raise this type of mentality, to form it, program it against Israel, because we're talking about the oppressor and the oppressed.
Right.
And for many of you that you do not speak Farsi, you can listen to what the Islamic regime says. And of course, the leftist, left-leaning American media will never talk to you about what they're saying. The Ministry of Culture inside Iran was saying that this movement that you see inside America and in Western world from the universities, this anti-Semitic, Zionist, anti-Zionist movement that is being fueled, we are fueling it, and we are fueling it successfully.
Right.
Not that they only just pump money, they send their agitators through the southern border to America. And who allowed it? A leftist government.
Right.
Opened the borders. All of those agitators, all of those people that have been trained for these type of situations, they were all brought in. And then many of them, now they're being deported. And who is opposing it? The left.
Wow. Everything you're saying sounds like a spy novel, right? Like it sounds like such a fantastic conspiracy, but you're telling us as someone who watched it in your own nation, or at least you were alive a little bit after the revolution, but you saw the effects of it. And so it's alarming. And, we're not trying to be alarmists at stories of anti-Semitism, but there's just, to me, there's no way around this idea that the times are pretty dire. There's some real danger. There's some real cause for concern.
Very much. If you go down the same path, you will get the same result. Europe has proven it to us.
Right.
We need to be really, really vigilant, really on our guards here in America. This is the last. They have overtaken, the Muslims has already overtaken, the left has already overtaken Canada. They're here.
You can see the videos all over social media.
They're here. The last standing nation that will stand with Israel is going to be America. It's going to be the right-wing, conservative America.
Yeah.
The liberal right-leaning Americans, that they will hold the fort. Otherwise, it's going to go down the drain.
Wow. Okay. So I want to bring it in for a landing with a couple of points here. I think number one, you are a Christian, you live in America, and you're unashamedly standing with Israel. You're unashamedly calling out Islam. Why are you not more fearful? Why are you willing to be on a podcast and be seen by people publicly all over the internet?
If we not to speak now, I think Bonhoeffer said, in the face of evil, if you do not speak or you not do anything, you just participated in it.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to see America turn to another Islamic caliphate. There would be no persecuted Jews or Christians that they could have a place that they could take refuge in. If Islam takes over, it's over for people like us that are coming from Muslim background believers and converting to Christianity, or even the Jews. There's no place for them. So speaking for Jews, you are speaking for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think what you said, a lot of people will probably say, yeah, no brainer. At the same time, then we're bringing religion back into it. And, we're trying to not always make it about religion, but it seems that we can't get away from it. Is it Christians and Jews that are the ones that have the most at stake or the most to worry about here?
Any freedom loving, you don't need to be Christians or Jews. If you love freedom, there is no freedom in Islam. There is no freedom in leftism. They're gonna ruin everything. You can't talk, you can't own properties, you can't have anything. You can gather. Why Christians could not gather, or the Jews could not gather in Syria or in Iran?
Right.
Because there's no freedom of expression, freedom of religion. And if the leftists in China, why Christians can't gather? Because the leftists have taken over. It doesn't matter if the left or Islam or both, the combination of both will take over any place. the Jews and the Christians or any freedom-loving people will not have a place to stay.
Wow.
Or they have just to compromise and shut up
Right.
and go with the flow, which it's impossible.
And staying quiet and going with the flow means you become a Muslim. Is that what you're
Just
saying?
surrender, submit to whatever it is,
Yeah.
and act as what they are.
Okay.
A hypocrite.
What do you want to say? You know, we have some Jewish listeners, excuse me, and we have some Christian listeners. What do you want to say to the Christian listeners? I mean, this is, we're your tribe, we're your people here. What do you want to tell them to do?
Love God and love America.
Okay.
That's what you need to do.
I like
Love your family, love your guns. That's who we are and what we need to do.
Wow. So you're really thinking that there's going to come a time where we're going to have to stand up and we're going to have to fight.
If you're not awakened yet, there's nothing else. After post-COVID, if you're not awakened yet, there's nothing left for me to say.
Okay.
You're sleeping, you just don't know about it.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Well, everything that you've shared, I think, has been so eye-opening because it comes from the perspective of someone who's lived in Iran, and you're telling us firsthand what the ideas are like, what the ideology is like here.
What the God of Islam is like.
Yeah.
That the God that you have inside, it will reflect on the outside.
Right.
That's the God of Islam.
The worldview and values and
That's it.
therefore actions
He
issue.
hates the Christians and he hates the Jews. That's the God of Islam.
Yeah.
Non-Muslim, he hates. Muslims, some of them he loves. The one that they sacrifice themselves for him. So that's Islam.
Wow. Well, you brought a book. You brought
Yes.
a little gift here for us. But I guess my question is, what do you have? And just tell people where they could get your book and what it's about.
The book is called Forsaking My Father's Religion. That's what I did. Now it's 19 years ago, actually. I forsook my father's religion. And they can get it on our website, iranchristians.org. Iran.
Okay.
The book is free, and I'll be glad to send it to you if you go on our website and request it.
Excellent.
Yep.
Also, make sure and go to iranchristians.org and check out Mohamad's book. Also, make sure and like and follow us on social media. Almost all of the platforms you can find stories of anti-Semitism. So make sure to go there, and we hope that you'll join us next time for another episode of Amplify.
Praise the Lord.
That was good.
How long have I been talking?
It feels like forever.
You got an hour and 10.
No, that's not bad.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all.
That was good. That was really good.
These magnets.
There was something that fell.
Oh, that's where it fell. Made such
Oh,
no, the magnet fell.
I thought it sounded like it was down there. Are you able to get it? I can move this for you. It's a good magnet.
Yeah.
What time is it now? It is 12.